And I will first begin the meeting with the remote meeting information. Good evening. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel, and this meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 virus, is currently following the guidance from Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. If you're unable to make public comment either via the Zoom meeting or by phone, please send an email to tburchield@lunenburgonline.com, and we will read that email at the end of the meeting public comment. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. In that regard, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and please don't screen share your computers. Any votes that we take during this meeting will be taken via roll call. And with that, I will open it up to any public comment that anybody from the committee might have. And go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, Dave Pastios, 56 Whiting Street. I would like to pass on my condolences personally and from this committee to the McMillan family. Douglas McMillan passed away just recently, and I've seen pictures up on Facebook of the procession of tractors and so on at South Cemetery. So a great tribute to a wonderful man. The McMillans were part of what I call my village. I grew up in this town in the late 50s and 60s, and we were all raised by a village, and that means all the parents of this town raised all of the children. And the McMillans were a very big part of my upbringing. So I pass on my condolences to the family. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other public comment? I will go ahead over to Peter. You did share an email with the memorandum of understanding, and I wasn't sure if there was any discussion that you wanted to have regarding that.
I was intending to cover it under. Committee reports, but
okay,
if that's okay.
Yep. Nope. That's perfect. And then with that, I don't see that Heather is necessarily available, so we're going to skip right over Heather. Heather is available. She's running in her town manager report and finance committee report. Do we have any reports from the town manager?
I'll give updates I gave at the last selectmen's meeting. So they met after the last finance committee meeting. So since your last meeting, the state announced that they're committing to no less than the fiscal year 2020 level of funding for unrestricted general government aid and Chapter 70 funding as the baseline amount for the fiscal 21 year. So that's that updates on the fiscal 21 capital plan, the town hall ADA ramp project. This project will be included in the Complete Streets project and bid as part of the larger project. And the engineer on that project is currently working on putting together a design and specifications for the Complete Streets project. And that project encompasses Town Center, if anyone recalls that. The Flat Hill Culvert design, the engineering firm is under contract for this project, and that will begin soon. As part of that, their work, they're going to prepare an application for the small bridge program to apply for the construction funding portion of that project. So hopefully that pans out for that portion. The Turkey Hill asbestos statement, this project is in progress. The marked police cruiser, that cruiser has been ordered. The self-contained breathing apparatus, this order is in progress as well. The ALS equipment, phase 1, that's on hold for right now. The ACO vehicle, animal control vehicle, this vehicle has been ordered as well. The midlife overhaul of Squad 3, this is on hold for right now, but the pump portion of that project may need to be repaired sooner than later, and that will be $15,000 out of the $65,000 for that project. Portable radios, some radios have been purchased for new officers that just graduated. And so that's approximately right now, that's $2,000 out of the $45,000 for that capital project. The AC design for the primary, that project is currently out to bid. And the senior center front entrance reconfiguration, that design is in progress, and then it will need to be put out to bid. The legislature passed an infrastructure bond bill that included $150,000 for the acquisition of turnout gear for the Lunenburg Fire Department and $100,000 for a fire alarm upgrade at the Lunenburg Primary School. This was sent to the governor for approval on August 3rd, and I haven't checked back since then to see. I'm sure it's been signed off since then. I had notified the select board in May that Representative Hay had notified me of this bond bill, and it required a list of projects by the next day. So I had provided the list that the board had formalized our legislators in February, and 2 of the 4 projects were chosen out of that list with reduced amounts project. So just a reminder, bond bills are not like an earmark. It is not guaranteed funding. You would need to formally request these funds be released through a bond, and it would require the governor's approval. So I've made additional requests from our senator and representatives on the formal process that would be required. And I'm still waiting to hear back. They themselves have reached out to the appropriate chairman of that committee to see what the formal process would be. In April, I had read about the federal stimulus package that it included community block grant funding. So I'd reached out to MRPC, our regional planning agency, if they'd be able to assist us with putting together an application. And in June, the Board of Selectmen signed a letter of support for Lunenburg to participate in a regional coronavirus community development block grant application. And this was approved recently. So the towns that are in that regional cohort are Lunenburg, Shirley, Royalston, Townsend, and Westminster. And the application request was $264,500. We actually received an award of $296,100. So this will be for microloans for small businesses and to support local food banks. So
Nice.
we're still doing all the final paperwork for that.
Okay.
The other noteworthy things, the treasurer collector is currently advertising a list of unclaimed checks on the town website. There's a long process involved for this, so it takes actually years. We're required to advertise on the website, then we have to advertise in a paper twice for a period of time, and a year after that period, then we can void the checks. So, and she's also working towards another tax lien sale and possibly an auction for foreclosed properties. So, those are all money generating potentially. So.
Okay. There's a line forming at your door. So Peter, your hand, I saw your hand first.
Thank you. Heather, on the state aid commitments, my understanding is that that has not made its way to the governor's desk at this point. Do you anticipate a timeline on that?
No, actually, it's my understanding that it was both the governor and the legislature that committed to that, because we actually received an email from the Department of Revenue with those amounts.
We did.
Yeah.
Okay. My understanding was that the legislature and the governor all needed to act before that actually happened, but apparently the DOR can
Well, they
just
issued
do
what
that.
what the numbers would be for unrestricted government aid and Chapter 70.
Okay. Oh, that's good. But I had seen the actual numbers in the Senate President's communication from a couple of weeks ago. I mean, it's all good news.
Mm-hmm.
You can say I told you so anytime. I mean, just feel free.
I had confidence in this administration because they have set a high priority on state aid and education. So I was confident that they wouldn't leave us high and dry.
Yeah, I mean, that said, I still think we need to be careful and conservative because the state's finances are not what they were 6 or 8 months ago, even. So, and some of these issues could reverberate even into future fiscal years. More pressing or shorter timeline issues. Do you anticipate a timeline in terms of when we figure out what we're going to do for fall town meeting in terms of appropriating some of these funds that we have not appropriated?
So the fall town meeting, that date will need to be set by the board, the September 1st meeting. And with the opening and closing of the warrant, which would be for the month of September. We'll have a generic article like we always do to make any necessary amendments to the budget. But we'll, in that time period between September and November, we'll getting our certified free cash and our new growth. So that will come into play as well, and we'll be looking at our local receipts and seeing how we're trending. So
okay,
all those things will come into play as far as making any adjustments to the fiscal 21 budget.
okay. But I mean, suffice to say, the numbers that came from the legislature versus the numbers that we anticipated for revenue are substantially different. There's more money there, and we need to think about how that money is going to be divvied up around areas that we did not fully fund last year, right? So we need to think about, when do you anticipate that you'll be making those recommendations?
I would want to be looking at local receipts, because our local receipts, if you remember, was level funded from our fiscal 20 amount as well. Mm-hmm. So making sure we're still being conservative based on how the trends are for local receipts.
Okay, I'm still not, what I'm looking for, Heather, and if you don't have it, that's fine, is I'm looking to anticipate a timeline for your recommendation, particularly around, what I'm really thinking about here is, we funded the school department to a 1.8% increase instead of a 2.5. We didn't fully fund some of our financial obligations. We didn't fully fund a firefighter. We didn't fully fund a police officer. We didn't fully fund the pavement management program. Are these things that we can potentially start moving money back into?
Yeah, without all the known information right now, I would estimate October timeframe, but I don't want to commit.
Yeah, well, it would have to be probably an October timeframe, because we'd have to have the public hearing before the town meeting, probably in October, I would assume, unless you're looking for a late November date for the town meeting. So we probably are looking at October. And then certainly leading up to that, as more information becomes available, we'll probably be able to get tighter timelines. Actually, at this point, it would just see the school opening go, and then probably get a sense of how that's looking, and all of the other stuff that's going on in town. But yeah, no, I think we should. I would like to have a little bit more discussion when we get to the committee reports around the schools in particular.
I got a lot. I got a lot there. I just have one more question, Heather, with respect to the ALS equipment and the Squad 3 overhaul. Why are those projects being delayed or on hold?
So the ALS equipment, because the paramedics that were in school, there was some delays in the training due to COVID-19. So it wasn't necessary to do that right away. And at the time, we were trying to be conservative as far as anything that we could potentially hold off right away. But knowing the current figures, there would be no necessary reason to hold those projects up longer.
Okay. Before moving on to Dave, who also has his hand up, I just wanted to ask a quick question on the microloans. When we talk about small business availability, I'm going to assume that includes local farmers.
They haven't issued any of the documents yet. The Department of Housing and Community Development. So we're waiting for all the final paperwork on that. And so I don't know the specifics yet, but it's for businesses with 5 employees or less, and the microloans are $10,000, no more than $10,000.
Okay. Dave, you had a question?
Yeah, I've got 2 things to talk about very briefly. First of all, I'm still a little nervous about the state funding. To my knowledge, unless I've missed something in the last month or so, there is still not a state budget. So a commitment to level fund versus an actual budget that level funds are 2 different things. So yeah, it all sounds good in the press, but I'm still a bit cautious as to whether all of this is really going to be rosy when we get to November, December. Anyway, I'll still hold off my told you so commitment until then. Second of all, Heather, as you know, and anybody that's seen the list of items that were in the bond bill, do you foresee the town of Lunenburg applying for any of the grant programs that are included in that bond bill, i.e. municipal infrastructure improvements at $100 million statewide that can be applied for? And there were a number of other grant programs, I believe libraries, and there were a couple of other things that kind of caught my eye.
I'm always up for applying for free money. Well, not free, but grant money for any sources. So usually we get notifications through the grant connector about when they release those and what the parameters are for applying for those.
Okay. Yeah, because I've asked a couple of people that I thought might know what the procedures were, and they said not at this point. It'll come out later. But there's some pretty big dollar amounts there. I mean, when you commit $100 million to infrastructure projects, that's not pocket change.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no other questions for Heather at this point, then we can move on to meeting minutes because we have a whole roster of them. And this part, Chris and Heather can kind of, sleep through.
Okay.
They weren't on the committee at this point.
Yeah.
Except that you'll have to ensure that you get the motions and everything. So
we did get minutes. We did get minutes for the meeting 3 weeks ago from Heather as well.
Yeah,
I have to update a little bit before we approve that.
Okay.
Chris,
Oh, okay. We can
Okay,
wait.
so-
Yeah.
We'll wait on that one, but yeah,
Okay.
I did. Okay.
So we need.
I was going to basically try to move them in a pack because the ones you sent us last week included or the last couple of weeks included 428, 514, 528, and 611 by my count.
Yeah,
And
there's also, I had 5-7 as well.
Okay. Thank you, because I didn't have that one. So basically, I know that I've read them all, and I know that the only one that I had a question on or an amendment to make on was 528, and that was just the removal of Michelle Walton as a participant. So I'll just ask at this time if everybody else had the opportunity to go back through all of the meeting minutes, and if you had any issues with any of the meetings from 5-7, 5-14, 5-28, 6-11, and 4-28, which was the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen with the state rep and Senator Tran. And if you have had a chance to go back and look at it, I would be happy to entertain a motion to accept those minutes. So Peter can, send them off to the town clerk and get them out of his computer.
Yeah.
I'll
Jay
move the.
Jay is talking, but he's muted.
Oh, you're muted, Jay.
You're muted, Jay. Unmute. Where's your tech support?
Okay. Yeah, John's got his hand up too, so I'll accept a motion from John and a second from Jay. I think that's probably what's happening over here.
I had.
There he
canceled
is.
all
There's
the
Jay.
Minutes.
Can you hear me?
And I thought they were satisfactory. I would vote to approve them en masse, if that's appropriate.
Okay, so John is making a motion to approve the meeting minutes of 428, 5-7, 5-14, 5-28, and 6-11 with the amendment of the Michelle Walton being taken off list of attendees on 5-28. Jay, were you going to second those?
No, I didn't see anything from June 11th.
You didn't see the June 11th meeting minutes?
I don't have in my email list here. I have all the other ones that he sent out. I don't see anything for June 11th.
Let me look.
I think because it probably was, it was attached to an email that was referring to 428.
Yeah.
Oh, could have been then.
Yep.
All the ones you sent me, I looked at.
Okay, then, Dave, would you be willing to second that?
My only issue is I saw a portion of them, but not all of them. So I'd rather Jay second it.
All right, then
Or he's reviewed all of them.
Well, why don't
All
we
right,
drop? Why don't we?
Let's amend let's amend the motion, John, if you will, to 5-7, 14, 28, and 428.
I will.
Okay, do I have a second for that?
Second.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, so on the vote to approve the meeting minutes for those periods, 428, 5-7, 5-14, and 5-28, John,
Aye.
Heather, you're abstaining, I
Yeah.
take it. Jay,
Aye.
Chris is abstaining, I take it.
Yes.
Dave,
I'm
and Peter,
Aye.
and
I
I
will-
for myself.
I will redistribute the 6-11 minutes following this meeting, just to get
Okay,
rid of any confusion. We can clean that up next meeting.
okay. And then 723, would you like us to take them up tonight, Heather, or would you prefer that we
We're gonna
table them
wait.
for the next meeting?
No, can we table it? I just want to make the update and then send it out again.
Okay, we will do
Okay.
that. So 6-11 and 723 will be taken up next week. Or next
Next meeting.
Next meeting.
week. We're not meeting next week.
Yeah.
All right, and that's gonna, thank you all. That's gonna take us to the, revisiting the capital plan appointment. Basically, it was brought to my attention that, and actually the reason why it's in there as bylaws and committee appointments is when the question was first raised to me, Chris had sent me an email and I did not realize that the capital plan appointment was a 3-year appointment and had not set it up as such. And then it occurred to me that there were probably many things in the bylaws that I hadn't read about the finance committee, so I wanted to do just basically a search for terms of the bylaws, say finance committee, just to see what else I might be missing. So I was also just going to open it up to people to, if you happen to do a search of the bylaws and you happen to notice anything that does come up in the bylaws related to the finance committee that I'm not doing a good job of, I would ask you to just bring that forward. But in the meantime, the town manager had put together a spreadsheet of appointments that I had, and now I don't. I was going to share that file, if I can find it, of the capital planning appointments and terms. Oh, there they are. Okay, if I'm going to try to share my screen, and I know I'm going to share the wrong thing. I should make Peter do this, but he doesn't have it.
I don't have the document.
No, you don't. That's just, like basically just sad. All right, where is it? Okay, here we go. All right, so basically we are, can you see that?
Yep.
Do I need to make it bigger?
Read it.
You make it bigger, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically we are on track in terms of the appointments to the capital planning committee in terms of being on the 3-year schedule. So this year, I would like for the committee to revote that appointment of Dave Passios so that it is for the 3-year term that's required as opposed to the 1-year term that we did. And then basically we're still on the right schedule for staggering the capital planning committee appointments. So I guess with that,
I guess this kind of begs the question: if we're appointing somebody to a 3-year term who currently has 2 years left on his current term, is that? I mean, I'm okay with doing that, but isn't that a little weird?
well, I think that basically the whole point of having the it did beg that question, and I did have that question, and I'm not sure if the bylaw needs to be revisited, but in making the appointment, certainly if Dave was not, or any member was not continuing membership on this committee, we would drop them from the capital planning committee and make a 1-year appointment at that time, and then the following year make another 3-year appointment. So, and that's basically true of all of them, because I'm just saying, how would you, school committee, they're all elected and on different schedules, and, selectmen, planning board, all of those are elected bodies.
And they have it wrong on school committee, because I wasn't the rep last year. It was Jim Levesque. So
Right.
that isn't even accurate.
That's my error then. It was
Okay, so yeah, Jim would have been for 2019 to 2020.
This was a, a long exercise to try
I
to
believe
put all
it.
this together. But I can answer that question about the question about if a representative, because it's not actually a representative of the committee. The way the bylaw reads, it says designee. It just turns out that all the committees and boards always have appointed a representative of their committee. So it could be someone else. Say the finance committee could designate someone else to serve on the capital planning committee.
Someone who doesn't even sit on the committee.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also within our purview, though, to replace or unappoint midterm as well, I would assume then, right?
It would, removal would have to follow the charter. There's a section of the charter about removal. So it would actually be a hearing to remove
Oh,
the person. the way that it's written.
Things to put on the list for the next
Oh
charter
my.
review.
Actually, that's not a charter review. That would be a bylaw review.
Yeah, that's
actually.
Yeah,
bylaw.
that's
Oh.
pretty easy to do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the bylaw is the one that states that it's 3-year terms and is staggered, which is interesting. But yeah, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I just lost my train of thought. If I'm looking at this correctly, John's reappointment for even a 3-year term was due this year. Is that correct? Is that why we're doing a 3-year for me?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. And Terry, could you move this sheet up just a little bit? I'd like to see the entirety of the citizen at large list. Okay, thank you. 2021.
Okay, now I've lost my my participant list, so I don't know who wants to
Now,
talk now.
now my understanding is Carolyn, and this just speaks to my issue that we still have ongoing. So Carolyn resigned in May of 2020.
Mhm.
So that's at-large seat is up for reappointment for 1 year. Is that correct, Heather?
Yes, because her term, she was reappointed in 2018, and that term was till 2021.
Right.
So she resigned in 2020. The remainder of that term is 2020 to 21.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So Heather, you have that posted on the website as being a 3-year term. Is that going to be reposted?
For the citizen at large,
Yeah, I think the way I read that was it was for a 3-year term.
I
You might just want to check it.
that way. So I will have Elaine amend that.
It's nice of you, Chris, to be looking at all of these postings so that we know what seats are open in town. All right. Any other questions or discussion on this? Do we want to make I don't know if we want to get into bylaw discussions at this point, but I think
I think it's a conversation that might be worth having prior to town meeting, if this is something that we can. I mean,
all right. And
I just find the whole. I find that weird that we would not have that we're put in a position where we need to appoint somebody for 3 years when we're on a board where our own terms are 3 years.
Well, we don't have to appoint ourselves. We can appoint other people to act, as well as when someone leaves the board, they can continue on
But
as our designee.
But the logic here is that in 2 years from now, there'll be a year left on this term, and 5 out of 7 members of this committee, our own terms will have lapsed. So we could have sat a completely different committee and have a representative that's only representing the votes of 2 members of this committee.
well,
No,
let
I
me
mean,
ask
the
you
person could continue to represent the board and still not be on the board or committee.
But what I'm trying to articulate here is that they might not be representing the actual opinions or objectives or intentions of the board.
But that's their charge.
Yeah. I mean, the one individual might not be either throughout that term.
And if they don't, then we go through the removal process. But I honestly don't see a problem with it. I think it has not been followed for a number of years, best I can tell, or maybe it was, but I never heard anything about a rotation in capital planning. It was a reappointment every year on every board's list. So
Probably because that makes sense. I don't know. I just have a difference of opinion.
Yeah, no, I share your opinion and I share the concern. And I guess the question that I would then raise would be if the board did not want to recommend someone beyond their term, which I is it possible to make a recommendation or an appointment for less than the 3 years, or are we required to do the 3-year appointment?
But you know, Chris has a 3-year on his, he just was appointed for 3 years. So technically, Chris could fulfill the 3-year requirement.
But technically, any of us could.
Right.
You know,
but
the one thing,
you're right now, you're the one obligated to the 3 years right now on the committee. No one else here has a 3 years left, correct?
That's irrelevant in this
No,
appointment
Jay
process.
does. Jay and Chris.
Oh,
do.
Jay
Yeah,
just got
I just was reappointed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this line of thought has no relevance to the 3-year appointments on other boards and commissions,
I
even
understand.
representing.
I understand your point.
And I don't care which way you guys go with this, but right now my feeling is that our option is a 3-year appointment because that's the way the bylaw is written and in effect right now. I don't think you can do anything less or more.
Yeah, that was my question.
yeah, and if I just may make a counterpoint to the why 3-year makes sense is for capital planning, you should be thinking long term it shouldn't be like every year a new board gets formed and kind of rethinks the capital plan of the town. So I think it makes sense that they're 3-year terms from that perspective. For the same reason.
Yes.
What's that?
Yes.
Yeah.
The continuity of having people on there that are aware of what happened the year before and the year before, and then if there's a change from another board, then they can provide the background information that new members may need.
Okay.
So,
All right. So basically, at this point, given that the way that the bylaw is currently written, and given that we are in a position to make a 3-year appointment, and given that if there is a change in the way that the bylaw is written in the next couple of years, which we don't know yet, I guess the question that I'm putting to the committee is, do I have a motion to appoint Dave to a 3-year position on the capital planning committee?
So moved.
Yeah, seconded.
Okay, thank you. And then basically, I think it does beg the question. You are right. It's, to me, as I'm reading it, and maybe that is what we look at is, next time around. Well, actually, I say next time around, but who knows? I mean, I might not want to be doing this next time around. So, it won't be my problem. That would be nice. But anyway, I think it would be good to revisit this and also to think in terms of one of the, and Chris, you had a good point in terms of pointing out that it doesn't have to be a member of the committee. I will say that there does always seem to be a strong preference on the part of most of the committees in the town to have it be a member, and want to see members from the other committees be the member on those committees. And I know that came up in the Charter Review Committee, where there had been people who were appointed but not committee members, and some committees felt underrepresented. So, but anyway, that was just personal aside. We are in the middle of the motion. I will ask Heather Lemieux. You have your hand raised. I don't know if you mean to.
That was from previously. Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
Yeah, that's kind of. I just wanted to mention that before we took a vote that I heard everything that we needed to hear. So with that, the motion is on the table for Dave Passios to be appointed to a 3-year term on the Capital Planning Committee, representing the Finance Committee, and I'll take your yeas and nays. John?
Aye.
Heather?
aye.
Jay?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
and I for myself. Thank you. Committee reports. Have people been out and about? And do we have anybody who would like to start first before we get to schools? Because I know Peter already said he has a lot on schools. So before we get to schools, do we have anybody else that had a committee report they wanted to make?
I don't have a report. I'm meeting with the Council on the Aging on Monday. So I will the next time.
Okay, super. Chris?
Yeah, so just one question I had is I was the liaison or the appointee to the Association of Town Finance Committees. So I've unsuccessfully reached out to them a couple times. I don't really know what that really entails, but they've
It
not
doesn't
been
really
responsive, I guess is my,
Yeah. Basically, it doesn't really entail anything other than if you happen to receive any interesting updates, notifications, notices from the ATFC, you might want to just bring it to our attention. Nothing particularly outstanding with that. Chances are good. A lot of the town finance people are probably working from home to the extent that they can. So, or finance, the Association of Town Finance, they're all doing what we're doing. So, and they're all people like us. So I'm not surprised that you didn't hear back from them. But yeah, don't stress over it. It's just basically, were there any communications from them or any notices or anything that you happened to pick up that looked like they'd be helpful?
okay, yeah, I didn't, but one thing that leads me to, and I didn't know the right time to bring this up in the meeting, but I did find a lot of links to where a lot of data is found. And then, we even have email problems at this meeting where emails were maybe sent, but the attachments, it wasn't known. And I was just wondering in general if this board could move towards a central repository like a Google Drive to store information. And even a repository in that Google Drive, a repository for like budget related documents, because I'm kind of scouring all over the place trying to find stuff. And perhaps that's just even a link, like a OneNote with links to where certain information was, so that I'm not constantly bothering town manager or others trying to look for things. And by the same fashion, I can get kind of up to speed rather quickly on some of the learning aspects of things.
Yeah. Heather, Lemieux, can you speak to that at all? Is it possible that we could set something like that up?
Yeah, I think that would be relatively easy to do.
Okay. When you say relatively easy to do, what do we have to do?
So we'd create a centralized Gmail address that the email and password would be shared with the committee members so they could access it. And then files would just be uploaded to that Google Drive.
Is that how other committees do it, with a shared drive?
Yep.
Oh
Well,
my
it's hap-
goodness. Okay. I think we should have an offline conversation about that, because that is not how it should be done.
No, I thought with school committee, we used our own passwords and email
Yeah.
address. That's how the school committee does it. You have to log in with yours so they know who's on
Yeah.
and who's accessed the documents. So I would think that all of our town emails would work if we were
Okay, why don't
providing
we,
the drive.
just to take this off, we'll take it offline.
Okay.
And I'll just ask Peter to work that out.
Peter, you worked that out, right?
Well, I don't know that I can work it out. I know what's good security policy and what's not, and I
Yeah.
feel obliged to raise my hand when I hear something that's not.
Yeah.
Well, I figure basically if
Everybody-
you don't want to do that, then I'll just ask Chris to do it and work with, but you've been working with Steve Malandrinos on other things and with Heather on other things related to that kind of.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
a Google Drive or a Microsoft OneDrive account or whatever, we should all have our own logins. And
Okay.
whether it's the town email or not, or whether we need a Google email or whatever, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, so long as we have, there's some record of who accessed what when. That's all.
And then it's access
Okay.
protected, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And then it shows you who accessed it.
Heather, did you write all that down?
I did. I wrote it all down.
Heather.
No, the other Heather.
Other L.
From you, I'm from you. Did you write all that down?
Yeah. I'll send you an email, Heather, with all my notes.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, Chris. Yeah, actually, I had forgotten about that request, and I think that's definitely a great idea. Dave?
Yeah, one other thing I thought of, it's not actually a meeting that we've had yet, where TC Passios committee is scheduled to meet again on Monday. But we had a very brief, two of the members had a brief conversation with the Board of Selectmen on Tuesday evening. One of their agenda items was the charge of our committee. It had come under question. And basically they pulled up Article 24 from the 2019 annual town meeting, and their interpretation of our charge and our committee's interpretation are in line with each other. So that has been settled, and we'll be moving forward with the charges that we felt we had in the first place.
Actually, to that point, one of the things that had come up at somewhere along the line, and I don't know where that was questions related to particular groups wanting to have access to the building, and part of the planning that goes into some of those groups potentially having access to the building. And I think I'm speaking specifically about the Boys and Girls Club, had been looking to become part of planning for a space for them as well. Am I hearing that wrong? Was it going to be a more generalized approach to community use of space? Or was there going to be opening of space to individual groups?
Those discussions are going to be covered under municipal uses in our charge. There's nothing set in stone, but the architects and engineers are having discussions with all of those groups that have expressed interest. There's no guarantee they're going to fit into the program because there's a lot of things to take into consideration. But all interested parties are being interviewed, and consideration is going to be made as best we can.
Then basically, in terms of interested parties, was there like an advertisement for interested parties in space at Passios to petition the committee to look at that? Or is it just people have expressed an interest and so the committee is meeting with them?
I think I understand what you're saying. I think there was knowledge that there was interest from certain entities, but we are taking the position that they have to make the request formally before we will entertain interviews and consider them trying to work them into the program.
Okay, so basically then before that would happen, and I'm just going to express this as a member of the finance committee to my rep, I think it would be, I don't know I don't know how I feel about there not having been an open notice to the town that if there are community members who would like to advocate for access to those sites, that there be any discussion beyond the original charge, which was town offices and what I read as general community use. So that if a group wanted to meet at using the community space, it wouldn't be space that was already now committed to a group that wasn't originally identified as needing space in the building. I mean, that's just my take on it, since there wasn't, I mean, and I'll speak to, something as simple as, the Grange. If the Grange wanted to meet at a community space at Passios and the space was not available because it had been committed to a group that was not a municipal town office, then I'd be probably, I think that in that regard, that wasn't part of what was brought to town meeting in terms of, yeah, the Boys and Girls Club can have space.
But the Boys
That's-
and
that's
Girls
just my-
Club, the Boys and Girls Club are not going to take space that would be set aside anyway for public meetings. There's going to be
Not public
rooms.
meetings. Not public meetings. I'm
Okay,
talking
so
about-
the,
Public space.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. I'm just not.
General
I'm not
pub-
talking about- Yeah.
okay, I get it. I can bring that to the committee.
I mean, I don't know how anybody else on the finance committee feels.
Yeah,
If you
I
think
don't-
that's over, then, yeah.
I think there's a risk of overcomplicating this, which is already a pretty complicated task that this committee has. My view of, in particular, the Boys and Girls Club issue is similarity of use. So when this came up to town meeting, part of the discussion and part of the charge with respect to the school department use of the building had to do with extended daycare in the school department, taking care of kids outside of school hours. And as it turns out, that's what the Boys and Girls Club does. It's a similar use. The only difference is age. Extended day is pre-K to 5. Boys and Girls Club is 6 to 8 or 9. I don't recall exactly.
Sixth grade. You mean sixth grade?
6th grade. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the question is, you know, and by the way, the school department struggles with there have been struggles which we have talked about in this committee and certainly at the school committee over the course of the last year or two around the finances and ability to support it and space needs and so forth. And the Boys and Girls Club has expressed interest in helping to accommodate some of those challenges over the course of the last year. So I think that what they may have asked or the interest that they have asked is certainly within the purview that, at least as a town meeting voter, I had in mind when I voted to form that committee and appropriate money to it. I don't think that the Grange or the Lions Club or any Hickory Hills or any other group has that standing, but that's my view.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with you more. They're both
Yeah.
national organizations that are getting preferential treatment for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the Boys and Girls Club and the building that they're in now, because I think we acquired that building. It was gifted for the use of the Boys and Girls Club, so that's kind of a special use, but I don't think the Boys and Girls Club should be given preferential treatment over other organizations in the town.
Well, I think that just goes to the point of, I don't have a problem with it as long as it's been something that's been made known that this is a process that the committee is going through and interviewing interested parties who are looking for youth. But I guess my issue would be in planning for architecturally designing to benefit a particular group that is not, rather than setting it up as a general space that the Boys and Girls Club could potentially be using. I guess that's my only concern was that it wasn't put forward that way. That any groups that have an interest in it, if you have a concern or a potential use for it, and you want to make us aware of that, then I would be more supportive of the notion. But I think that because it's been added in without notification to the community that this is what we're doing, I'm a little bit more leery of it. That's all.
And just from a Grange perspective, we have requested use of town offices in the past. So has that been discussed at these meetings? So, I doubt it.
There's been no formal request.
Yes, there has.
So, well,
What do you mean, formal request to whom? There's been no
to our
formal,
committee.
well, there's been no request for requests. There's been no
Okay,
RFI or
well-
RFP or anything.
I'm
Okay,
not
but
gonna,
you're-
I'm not gonna debate this tonight. You want to debate it with the TCP committee, fine, do it Monday night.
Well, I think you
I'm
should
not
be
here,
debating
I'm
it
not
with the
here.
TCP
I'm a
committee.
representative of the finance committee on that committee. So what we're debating right now is not appropriate for this venue.
No, but I think you should be
Yeah.
taking that back to the committee.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. I agree. You should be taking back our concerns as members of Finance Committee to the TC Passios Building Committee. That's your role.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
he
we
will
haven't
do that.
What
voted,
it's
we haven't
worth.
voted on that.
I don't agree with either of you for what it's worth. So if we might take a vote of an opinion on this, that's fine. But I think the way Chris just described things is just not the way it is. It isn't a secret what we're doing with TC Passios. These have been posted meetings. We've voted on it at a town meeting what our intentions are. Any organization that had an interest, I don't think there are too many people that are so shy in Lunenburg that they can't express their interest and advocate for themselves. I think, believe me, I'm not I have my reservations about this project, but I think that, this could easily be interpreted as an opportunity to derail a project that is pretty complex. And I don't think it's in the best interest of the town to do that.
Oh, no, and I just want to clarify that I think what Chris was saying was different from what Dave was talking about. And I think that basically what Chris was talking about is when people make requests of the town for town space in order to use it, that doesn't go through a particular committee that's looking at a future use of the building. That goes just through the town. So that's, which is very different than what the TC Passios committee is aiming to do. Again, my only concern is just making sure that we don't get to the point where you guys are presenting something and all of a sudden somebody says, well, I wanted to use that space, but and so it's just making sure that everything's transparent. That's all.
To Peter's point, I cannot bring that to the TC Passios committee as a request from this committee unless it's voted on and approved.
Right.
Which part?
All of it.
Any of it.
Okay, but basically, would you basically bring to the committee that there was some discussion and some concern raised about this? And what do you guys, did you guys think about it? Or would you prefer a vote?
I think it requires a vote. I can give some generalizations, maybe that there was some discussion about more transparency for other groups, but not as a member of the finance committee. I won't, unless it's voted.
Okay. Do we have anybody that wants to pursue this any further?
When is that meeting, Dave?
Monday.
At what time?
It's on the calendar. I believe it's 6 o'clock Monday evening on Zoom. Public comment at the beginning and at the end.
Okey-doke. Any other discussion on, does anybody else have a committee report, or are we ready for Peter to talk about school?
Oh, goals.
Okay, I guess we're ready for Peter to
This
talk
is
about
not
school.
this is not a written report, so, and I don't expect it to be too long, but there is a lot of information, obviously, that has come about, and a lot has transpired since we last met. Last Wednesday, as I hope everybody on this committee is aware, the school committee met, and the most pressing agenda item was the decision to open the school year on, well, first of all, to approve a new school calendar, taking into account the changes from the Commissioner of Education's guidelines around 180 school days, that being revised down to 170, so long as those additional 10 days were front loaded prior to the 16th of September. And so the school committee voted to amend the school calendar to open on the 16th, but to apply most of that time that was previously planned to be school time to teacher training and planning and professional development, specifically to address their next item on their agenda, which was the decision to pursue a hybrid learning plan, or to open under a hybrid learning plan. And basically the Department of Education had asked for 3 plans and a recommended preferred plan, 3 plans being fully remote, fully on campus, and a hybrid plan, which includes elements of both. And the school committee voted unanimously to approve the superintendent's recommendation for a hybrid plan, which will, with some exceptions, divide the school population into 2 cohorts, cohort A and cohort B. Every student will do remote learning on Monday. Cohort A will attend on Tuesday and Thursday in person and learn remotely on Wednesday and Friday. And cohort B will attend in person on Wednesday and Friday and learn remotely on Tuesday and Thursday. And there was a slew of factors that went into the plan, basically dealing with available space to be able to maintain levels of social distancing, to be able to eat lunch with limited cafeteria space and not have to start lunches at 9:30 in the morning and end at 1:30 in the afternoon under a full attendance plan, given the restrictions. And also to deal with busing challenges in the event that we were to split the population of the school population and bus 2 different groups back and forth to school. And as it turns out, and this will be a recurring theme in this report, busing, as it's turned out, has proven to be probably the biggest challenge. DESE guidelines limit the amount of students on any bus to 25, and we only have 10 buses that are part of our current bus contract with D-Bus, and there's no availability for additional buses. And so that put a lot of limitations on what was practical on the part of the school committee. So anyway, for those of you who watched it, it was a very long meeting. They eventually came to the decision to this hybrid plan. At the conclusion of the meeting, I asked under public comment if, given that this was a almost 4-hour meeting, at a future meeting, we could have a look at the financial ramifications of things that have occurred over the course of the last couple of months, basically from town meeting until now, and what's anticipated in the future. And I had the opportunity to meet yesterday with the superintendent and Mr. Cassidy, basically for an update on some of the issues that I had asked for in advance of this meeting. And so Mr. Cassidy prepared a document which I will share with you all. It was just an email, but it was basically a Word document that he kept notes on during our meeting. Basically looking at positions that are still open and those positions that have been backfilled due to retirements or resignations. Right now, they're about halfway there, a little less than halfway there, in terms of filling those positions. Right now, there are, well, a little more than halfway there. There are 4 unfilled positions and an interim with the primary school principal. They don't anticipate that backfilling will require any additional budgetary requirements, particularly when it comes to retirements and that kind of thing. They are typically able to hire somebody for less than what the retiree was making. The second issue, with respect to buses, I believe we discussed in our last meeting this recurring issue around FY20 funds and that negotiation that happened with D-Bus and Vanpool. That issue is still not resolved, and I believe will be or is on the agenda for the Board of Selectmen next Tuesday. And I don't have any meaningful new information to report on that topic. With respect to fiscal year 21, however, there's also a need to re-engage with our transportation providers over a number of issues. Number one being they're only going to transport 4 days a week instead of 5. So there may be some cost savings associated with that. But there are also some additional bus sanitization and supplies and those kinds of things that they still need to work out. I forwarded you and Terry mentioned the teacher contract. So the LEA has negotiated and the school committee has approved a 1-year contract for the LEA. Some very minor language changes that have some financial impact. It's basically a flat contract with one exception. We have a step program. There's no cost of living increase per se for this year. But what they did build in is a 0.5% raise for the second half of the year for teachers who are in the very top step who wouldn't otherwise be moving up a step or moving right or left due to education movement. So I believe that affects about 85 teachers. And so there's a cost associated with that. The school department has received 2 grants, sizable grants, related to COVID. They're both from DESE, but they're basically, I believe, funneling funds from the CARES Act. The first grant was for $377,550. This was called a CVRF, School Reopening Grant. And there was a second grant, an Elementary and Schools Emergency Relief Fund, for $198,073. Across these grants, there are COVID-related stipends, custodial overtime, substitute teachers, PPE, anticipated increased unemployment costs, technology needs, including online programs and training. But in addition to that, the school department is making 2 1-year positions and hiring for those positions. One is a psychologist, which relates somewhat similar to the request that was made, but not funded for the psychologist during last budget year. And I'll talk about that in a moment. And there are shared costs across the 2 grants for a social worker and a nurse. And these all relate to COVID-related impacts. Specific to the psychologist, in the or the primary grades, all school departments are way behind for any kind of pre-K and kindergarten screening because it was all got canceled in the spring, as well as any requests for new IEPs or renewed IEPs. That apparently requires the involvement of a school psychologist, and they're all severely backed up. And so bringing in that position to help deal with that backup and then onboard and get these IEPs in particular into full force and effect is going to be a challenge and something that is going to need to be accelerated or a focus area for the administration. So those are the major budgetary related items that came up both in the school committee meetings and my subsequent discussions with Mr. Cassidy and Dr. Burnham. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that I might be able to answer or relay any questions or concerns.
Chris?
Yeah, so I did see that note about Chapter 70 funding, and I did look at the kind of the entire cherry sheet. And one thing I'm a little concerned about, I don't know if it's a this year thing or a future year thing, but I think we need to be watching the school receipts and assessments on the cherry sheet, meaning, you know, as districts kind of move towards their decisions on in-person and hybrid and remote, I think school choice could become something that a lot of parents and students tend to look at. And I know we have a temporary suspension on receiving students. And I was actually pretty surprised that we send 78 students and we receive 34 students. So we're a net sender of 44 students. And there's probably all sorts of reasons for that. But one that kind of caught my eye is the public virtual schools. So as we move into a model of potentially remote learning, you know, the two Mass public virtual schools, meaning TECA and Mass Virtual Academy, they're going to have, you know, probably a decade of experience than a traditional public school might have. And at almost, you know, it's like $8,700 a student. You know, if we were to double even, or, you know, let's just go round numbers. If 10 more students were to be added to that, that's an $87,000 delta on our sending school choice. So I just think it's something that we should be monitoring and looking at. The trends both for sending and receiving have been going down over the last 4 years, but I think we're kind of in a situation where, you know, things could get kind of new normal, if you will.
Yeah.
And-
Hey, Jay, you're okay. Good. Sorry, I was getting Jay's mic in my ear.
And you know, the other portion
Hey,
of
Chris,
it is,
can I just make a point on that, or just respond? Just because
Yeah, sure.
I do think there are some issues that are pertinent to your point around school choice, and the figures that you cited around last year's budget are correct, and it was a extended topic of conversation both here and the school committee last year on that topic. Specific to this year, though, there was a survey or a registration request that just went out today from the school department, because we are giving students the opportunity to go fully remote and take advantage of some services that are fully remote services. And there will inevitably be costs associated with that. I don't know what they're going to be or what the results will be in terms of students that opt to go fully remote. But that is absolutely something that is a potential wild card over the course of the next month from a budgetary standpoint.
so I guess
Chris, I'll let you finish.
the one question I would have is in the budget, you know, we have the governor's budget and there were dollars assigned to those items. once that's approved, that's kind of locked in for this year, right? So if students make a choice to opt out, this year's locked in. So maybe we're really looking at a future year.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how that money will flow. Heather might have a comment on it. I really don't know, because the way the online schooling is proposed, I don't think that it's technically a school choice mechanism, but I just don't know.
Right, so to clarify, what you've been discussing with the schools, and Heather will probably have better information on this, would be that the student stays enrolled with Lunenburg and Lunenburg pays for the remote learning. Is
Right.
the model that you're saying, Peter, which is a model.
Right.
And I think that's why
Right.
the school committee was at educate.
But the difference in terms of the way the money flows, Chris, you're onto something. The way Chapter 70 works is it's a catch up from the previous year's school choice. So that kind of works in arrears. What we're looking at for this year is probably not going to work in arrears, and will constitute a current year cost.
Okay, and I was specifically referencing TECA and Mass Virtual Academy because those are kind of treated as a district in and of themselves from the, but what you bring up is also an issue, just the additional cost for online learning via some, third party or something.
Yep.
But so my question, Chris, that those schools, they would be a school choice school. Someone could opt to go there and it would be considered school choice, all remote learning. I could see that happening this year as well. A number of people.
Right, and I think the difference was that if you're able to manage it through an enrollment within the district, and the district is purchasing the online learning or the virtual learning deck, that the cost to the district is, instead of $8,700 lost, is like $3,000 lost or $4,000 lost. So it's basically a big change. But Heather Lemieux did unmute herself to respond. Okay. I think that somebody, let me just bring her in. Since I can't see her.
One other point of information is that I do believe that those school choice options, though, do fall under the cap restrictions. So it's not 8,700; it's actually capped at 55.
Yeah, it's less. Yeah.
I was just going to add that as far as to Chris's point about the sending tuition, receiving tuition on the cherry sheet, that could fluctuate here. So those figures get reported at different times of the year. So I believe there was a report that just went to the state recently on, it would have been last year's figures, I believe, but I believe it's done again another time during the year.
Right. And I think the other thing that I did hear at the school committee meeting was that they're looking for people to enroll or to make their choices quarterly.
Yeah.
Although it does do a choice out to a TECA or another option, then I would imagine that would be a full year decision.
Yeah, I don't know what the ramifications there are, but they did. That's a good point, Terry. So those forms that went out today, and I haven't even looked at the forms or the links yet. I believe their request is to get those back by the 30th or 31st of August. And the school department is asking for students that opt for fully remote, that they commit to 1 quarter at a time for fully remote, or a minimum of 1 quarter at a time. And the reason being, as the superintendent described it, is she's okay logistically with losing a hybrid student and that student not showing up to school. From a logistics management standpoint, each of those seats is really important. Whereas if all of a sudden we have, 15 students who decide they don't like fully online learning and they miss their friends, and they decide the first week of October that they want to come back to 2 days a week, that presents a huge logistical and planning challenge for the school department. So they're asking for a quarterly re-up, if you will, for those students.
And then I think what's going to be interesting is there's typically an October 1 report, which is when you find out, or when you basically identify who you have. and who you don't. So it'll be interesting to get a sense from the schools what their enrollments are looking like once we get there and see how many people are opting out.
I'm just thinking out loud here, but I would suspect that the October 1 report is not going to be an October 1 report.
It'll probably still be October 1, but it may not be like that accurate.
Yeah.
Because I think they end up using that for federal things. So.
Oh, okay. There's federal money there. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it has other ramifications. So.
It's going to be a hard report to compile this year.
Yeah. Chris, did you still have any other questions? You still have your hand up. So.
Oh, sorry. Well, I guess I did have one other. Is do we know anything about what Monty Tech is looking to do and how that may hit us in the future?
That's a great question, and I asked that when we had the superintendent here last time, and I've asked it at a couple of meetings, and the answer is no, we don't. We have been assured by Monty Tech at some point going into just before town meeting that our Monty Tech assessment would not increase this current fiscal year, that they would work within the confines of their appropriated budget. But Monty Tech is on a hybrid plan, not exactly the same as what we have, but they're pursuing a hybrid plan as well. But we don't have any indication of what that means from a financial impact.
Right, and when they said no increase in the assessment, it's the assessment that was already in the budget and voted on that they had already increased from last year. Yeah.
That's not to say we're not going to get tattooed next year by costs from Monty Tech, but.
See, I was happy at the beginning of this meeting. Now I'm depressed again. All right. Any other committee reports or department reports or anything else of the like? No? Okay. None of those. Then debt discussion update.
Yeah. So as I think we mentioned in our last meeting, Dave and John and I had met to kind of get organized a couple of weeks ago, and we have not met since then. I haven't called a meeting. If you recall, the first phase of the project was to collect information and come up with agreeable numbers and timelines for anticipated projects. And some of the projects are fairly straightforward in that you can draw numbers and make assumptions from Vertex reports and other places. And frankly, the dollars aren't as big. And I still need to spend some time with Heather to nail down an agreement on those. But the two big ones that we're looking at in the next decade, I may have misestimated or underestimated the time and complexity that would take to get to an agreeable formulation for planning purposes around both the TC Passios building and the Turkey Hill building. So Dave mentioned in their meeting, they met with the architects at their last meeting. I watched that meeting and had a conversation with Dave following the meeting. And they're at least a meeting to 3 meetings away, I think, in my opinion, and I hope Dave agrees with me, from having a vague thumbnail in terms of, based on their recommendation, this is what the number is going to be. And so, I thought that was something we could swag from a debt planning standpoint, but I feel pretty uncomfortable doing that right now, given where they're at in their process. The second one being Turkey Hill Elementary School. This was the other topic that I met with the superintendent and Mr. Cassidy on this week. And we went through a lot of the technicalities that we were all briefed on last year when we had the, what did we call that meeting we did last fall?
Joint.
I'm sorry?
Oh,
The joint meeting? Yeah.
The joint meeting that we had last year.
Forum. We had that big forum.
Yeah. Symposium. Symposium is the word that I was blanking on. And the reality is that not only is there a complexity associated with the number, which we don't know, and Mr. Londa really needs to be brought in the discussion, and he hasn't as of yet. So we agreed to meet again on the week of August 31st, the three of us plus Mr. Londa, to kind of come up with something that, at least the three of us can say, or the four of us can say, we know this is not an accurate number, but it's our best guess for planning purposes, and we're going to go with it for this exercise. Right now, neither the superintendent or Mr. Cassidy felt comfortable about it, but there are a lot of variables in this, and if you folks recall, there's issues around the solar panels on the top of that building. There's a roof replacement that's inevitably going to be needed in the next 4 or 5 years. There's a boiler that's projected for 2030 on the capital plan right now. And these are starting to add up to real dollars, like well in excess of $6 million in capital improvements that are going to be needed in that building over the course of 10 years. So, and some of these are tied to time horizons, like the roof and the solar panels. So, they recognize the importance of the discussion, but obviously they're pretty busy with other things. So I think what that means to me is that this project is probably going to take a little bit longer than I anticipated, getting, particularly the projections around the costs of anticipated projects. But we'll get to it. I don't think we'll be report ready by November, but I think we'll be, sooner or later, we'll get this thing on the right path.
John, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what Peter said. We had a project that is huge over a long period of time, and a lot of unknowns. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to end up generating a range, a low range and a high range. And it's going to be pretty, at least based on what we know now, it's going to be a pretty wide range. And we have to then it becomes, in my mind, the purview of the town, of the voters, to decide what projects they want to do when. And that's going to crowd out a lot of other stuff, I think.
Yeah. I mean, again, my principal concern here is that the decisions we make in the next 2 years are done with as clear-eyed view as we possibly have of the next 10 years. And that view is not going to be as clear as we'd like it to be, but we still need to do our best to try to do that. What I don't think is acceptable, John, though, is to go and try to bring forth or work on a report or even start to crunch numbers that we know darn well somebody of consequence, like a superintendent or a director of grounds, is going to say, that number is complete crap. Where did you get it? Right? Like, we've got to get agreement with the principals on the projects, at least, that this is a decent enough planning number for now.
Totally agree, Peter. I totally agree on that. And it's just that we have to, at the same time, realize that it's not to convey to the town voters and to the people we're working with that this is not an exact number.
Yep. It's horseshoes and hand grenades.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's going to basically be, not an exact number, but it's, is it even going to be anywhere near close? I guess that's going to be the real challenge.
So the net is I don't have anything specific to report. I'm expecting that meeting the week of the 31st, so it may even be another meeting, beyond our next meeting,
Sure.
before I have anything to visually show you. But I'm hoping that our first meeting in September, I can show some actual progress.
Okay. Very good.
And that depends to a certain degree on the progress of the TCP committee as well.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah, they might have some way to go with that. Then with that, being the end of the committee reports and the discussion, we're at public comment. Do we have any public comment from Peter? Do you still have your hand raised or that?
Yeah, I do. Sorry.
Okay. Do we have any public comment from anybody on the committee? Seeing no public comment, no hands up, then I am happy to, let's see, the next meeting is going to be August 27th. I don't know if anybody has anything in particular they'd like to see on the agenda on the 27th. If you do, send me an email this week And I'll try to get the agenda out a little bit earlier. And with that, I'm happy to
Terry?
entertain a motion.
Could I,
I'm sorry.
could I just, I mean, obviously they're, the same stuff we've had, pretty regularly over the last several meetings, and I think it's worth revisiting. I don't know that in the next meeting, even putting the debt discussion on that agenda is going to be time well spent. 'Cause
Okay.
I don't think we'll be anywhere on that. However, I would like, and it probably just needs to be under Heather's report, but I would like, us to try to establish some clarity in terms of the budget discussions that we expect to evolve, particularly with respect to the effects of state aid, because these are discussions that need to involve town department heads and the school committee. And so I don't think it's something that we want to rush through in the month of October. I think having a clear-eyed view and letting people know that this stuff is going to happen and more or less when it's going to happen is an important thing to do.
But then basically, I think it probably would be a good place to start to make sure that everybody has a copy, and I'll put it on the agenda to just begin budget discussions. And we'll actually just take a look at the budget as it was approved at town meeting and as it was initially presented before. So the pre-COVID and COVID, so that we've taken a look at what the thoughts were with the budget before all the cuts were made based on the COVID.
I think a good way of looking at it might be to take a look at the budget that we approved, but with like a little flag next to the lines that we know, we deferred for
right.
Like
Right, that's
like OPEB or pavement
Right,
or whatever.
Well, you also use footnoting, at least little notes, not just a flag, but notes to direct the discussion further.
I'm sorry, John, I missed a lot of that.
And just, I was elaborating on Peter's suggestion about flagging some of the stuff, saying we ought to have explanatory notes as well,
Okay,
just to direct the conversation with further discussion.
okay. Yeah, we'll pull out the budget and make sure that Chris and Heather have those documents so that they can see the history of the development. And then we can just go over answering any questions about those things that you guys might have. And then make those notes and get a pulse check on the town manager in terms of where she thinks that she might be heading with it, even though it's going to be premature next time. And I know that you probably won't have a good sense of where you think you are yet. All right, so we'll discuss the budget. And then with that, I will again entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, could I interject one more time?
Okay.
Sorry, just wanted to.
You guys just don't want to break up. Okay, go ahead.
I'm being tedious here. I'd just like to ask Heather Strook if I could contact her sometime over the minutes, just to give you my feedback on a couple of things. What time would be convenient?
Oh, you can send me an email and I'll let you know what's convenient.
Okay, thanks. That's it. May I make a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second.
Do I have a second? Okay, so we roll call. John.
Aye.
Heather.
Aye.
Jay.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
Aye for myself. So we are adjourned at 8:34. Thank you very much and have a great couple weeks.
Night.
Thanks, everybody.